Mr. President, on roll call vote 200.
Senator from Ohio.
Thank you. On roll call vote 200, I voted nay. It was my intention to vote aye. With apologies to the staff and everybody else here late, I ask unanimous consent that I be permitted to change my vote since it will not affect the outcome.
Is there an objection? Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Senator from Arizona.
Mr. President, placing holds on hundreds of military promotions over a single policy disagreement is unconscionable. It's harming our national security and is going to have cascading effects for years. Not only will military services be left without confirmed leaders, but our senior leaders are going to have to do multiple jobs at once. This will disadvantage the services at every level and leave less experienced members to have to step in to fill their boss's shoes. As someone who served in the Navy for 25 years, I want to paint a picture of what that looks like in the real world. Operations plans, they will not get updated. Now, these are the plans that prepare us for military conflicts, for humanitarian disasters, and any conflict we face around the world. Operations and exercises will suffer because they lack an expert at the head of the table who can weigh strategic risks and who is empowered by Congress to make critical decisions. We won't have confirmed senior leaders at the table in places like Africa, where we are trying to strengthen ties and security cooperation with our partners to counter violent extremists and the rising influence of Russia and China. And Mr. President, speaking of China, we won't have confirmed senior leaders at critical posts in that region of the world where they are empowered to bolster our capabilities. And let's not forget, these holds are preventing the promotions of military leaders in Alabama. There are a lot of really important units who operate out of the Redstone Arsenal, including the Missile Defense Agency, which is responsible for developing U.S. defense against incoming ballistic missiles. The Missile Defense Agency's next director is one of those officers at Redstone who is waiting for his third star before he can officially assume this new role. The senator from Alabama is preventing that. Do we really want a leadership gap at the Missile Defense Agency? And lastly, I have to mention that this tactic treats our military service members and their families like political pawns. Let me tell you, this isn't just like holding up a promotion like in any other job. This blockade of military promotions, it's hurting military families who are having to put off moves to new assignments across the country or across the world. That means a military spouse cannot start a new job. It means a new school year starts without military kids who are stuck at their last base and don't know if they're going to be able to maybe try out for the sports team or join a club. Now, Mr. President, I know from experience just how hard these moves are. They're hard for military families. And that's under the best of circumstances, let alone when they are stuck in the middle of this. And as our military faces recruitment challenges, this stunt, and Mr. President, this is a stunt. This stunt is making a decision easy for a military family who has supported their service members maybe for decades to finally say that they've had enough. Now, maybe they'll choose to retire instead of assume yet another unknown. Brought to you by the senator from Alabama. Or maybe a junior service member, maybe that person decides not to make a career in the military because they see so much uncertainty as their bosses are treated like political pawns. And these holds are going to have cascading effects. It's going to get worse and worse. This is not just some abstract idea. Let me talk about a few of the military leaders whose promotions are being blocked. Mr. President, the President of the United States has nominated Rear Admiral Frederick Kocher to be a Vice Admiral in the United States Navy and the Commander of the 7th Fleet. The Commander of the 7th Fleet is not going to be able to take over as a confirmed Vice Admiral in that job. He has spent 31 years in service in 29 different duty assignments, and by the Senator of Alabama, he is being treated like a pawn. The President has also nominated Rear Admiral Douglas Perry to be a Vice Admiral in the United States Navy. Now, he is currently the 2nd Fleet Commander in the Joint Forces Command in Norfolk. He has spent 34 years in the United States Navy. The Senator from Alabama is treating him like a political pawn. The President has nominated Rear Admiral Yvette Davids to be a Vice Admiral in the United States Navy and the Superintendent of the U.S. Naval Academy. Now, she has spent 34 years in service. She was the commander of a carrier strike group, and now the Senator from Alabama is treating her like a political pawn. The President has nominated Rear Admiral Brendan McClain to be a Vice Admiral in the United States Navy and the commander of the Naval Surface Forces Command. That's the Naval Surface Force in the Pacific Fleet. Now, he spent 33 years in service. Senator from Alabama is treating him like a political pawn. The President has nominated Rear Admiral David Cheever to be a Vice Admiral in the United States Navy and also the commander of the Naval Air Forces in the Pacific Fleet. This is all of our air forces for the United States Navy, and I served in the Pacific Fleet, aboard an aircraft carrier. Admiral Cheever has spent 35 years in the United States Navy, was also the commander of a carrier strike group, now being treated like a political pawn. The President has nominated Vice Admiral Charles Cooper to be a Vice Admiral in the United States Navy and the Deputy Commander of the U.S. Central Command. Mr. President, how critical is that? 34 years of service, being treated as a political pawn. The President's nominated Robert Goucher to be a Vice Admiral in the United States Navy. He's currently the commander of the Naval Submarine Forces. All of our submarines in the Atlantic Fleet. Attack and ballistic missile subs. He spent 32 years in the United States Navy, and the Senator from Alabama is treating him like a political pawn. Same is true for Rear Admiral Shoshana Chatfield. She has been nominated to be promoted to Vice Admiral and to be the U.S. military representative to NATO, NATO's military committee. She has spent 35 years in uniform. The Senator from Alabama is treating her as a political pawn. The President has also nominated Rear Admiral James Downey to be a Vice Admiral in the U.S. Navy and commander of the Naval Sea Systems Command. The Naval Sea Systems Command is all the engineering and development. Mr. President, you know from being a senator from Virginia how critical it is to have somebody in this post. That is confirmed by the United States Senate. The Senator from Alabama is treating the Admiral as a political pawn. The President has nominated Major General Roger Turner to be a Lieutenant General in the United States Marine Corps and the Commanding General of the 3rd MEF. Mr. President, I believe your son serves in the U.S. Marine Corps. The 3rd MEF in Japan is not going to have a confirmed general. He has spent 34 years in service. And Mr. President, finally, well, not finally, I have a few more. And by the way, there's another 100, sitting over here on the bench. President has nominated Vice Admiral William Houston to be an admiral in the United States Navy, full admiral, while serving as the Director of Naval Nuclear Propulsion. Now, this admiral is in charge of all of our nuclear reactors, and he can't get promoted after spending 33 years in the United States Navy because Senator Tuberville is treating him like a political pawn. And now, finally, Mr. President, the President of the United States nominated Major General Tony Hale to be a Lieutenant General. Now, I know Major General Hale. He's currently serving as the Commanding General and Commandant, or the Commanding General of Fort Huachuca in my state of Arizona. He has spent 29 years in uniform. He's been in 18 different duty assignments, 6 in support of combat operations, and the senator from Alabama is treating Major General Tony Hale as his political pawn. Mr. President, I've been here for 2.5 years. There's not something I've felt more strongly about than this, and I don't think the senator from Alabama gets it. I mean, this blockade of military promotions is doing real damage to our national security right now. It's doing great harm to military families. It's going to have cascading effects for years. And every single day that this continues, the consequences of this get more severe. So I urge my Senate colleague from Alabama to remove his hold on these nominations so that the Senate can perform its constitutional duty and enable our military readiness and our national security. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.